All right, we are live. It is 6 o'clock. Caucus is in session. Agenda, anyone with anything to add?
Planning.
Line item 5, planning. So planning commission.
Yep.
All righty. Anything else?
Facilities use agreement.
Facilities use. Line item 6. And then I would like to add line item 7, September meeting dates. Anyone else? All righty, seeing nothing else. Moving on to fiscal officer's report. Do we just have the bills this evening?
Yes.
All righty. Council minutes, everyone's either been emailed them or received the hard copy. All righty. Tonight's legislation, we do just have the third read on the blanket POs. I will ask that we do, as per our discussion last night, pass that as an emergency. That's simply being done because we are in summer recess. This will allow us to, after the third read, have that take effect immediately rather than having that 30-day wait period. If everyone's okay with that.
Yeah, we'll amend that. And speaking with Amy, I'll amend it too to reflect that there was a July 29th special council meeting. So we have minutes for that as well.
Okay.
Ray, the other thing under your report, I know we don't have it in caucus right now, but we do need a motion to come out of summer recess.
I'll do that
true.
right
Yes,
after
summer
the
recess.
adoption of the agenda.
Okay.
Perfect. Did almost forget that. Thank you, Mayor. Line item 5, Planning Commission.
Yeah, everybody is aware, everybody's had a chance to deliberate. The fact the Planning Commission did approve to send to council for their consideration to change the zoning at 452 Pennsylvania from residential A to commercial A. So tonight, under the committee report, I'll talk about it again, and then we'll have to set a public hearing to hear anybody from the public on that before we pass that legislation.
Okay. Number 6, Mr. Schmidt, Facilities Use Agreement.
Yes. During the service report, we'll be discussing the termination of the facilities use agreement, the current facilities use agreement with the school.
All right. Any questions? And moving on to line item 7, September meeting dates. Keeping with the normal schedule, we are looking at Tuesday, September 1st for September committees, and Wednesday, September 2nd, and Wednesday, September 16th for the meeting dates. Everyone's okay with that? All right, I'll just go ahead in my report and handle that. And then last but not least, as the mayor was so kind to remind us, exiting summer recess. You'll be so kind.
Already had it down on the agenda.
Yep, perfect, Mr. Fisher, thank you. All righty, seeing nothing else for caucus, it's 6:05. Caucus is closed.
All right, Mr. Minor, are you ready for a records retention meeting?
Mr. Minor is muted. Can you unmute Mr. Minor?
Bottom left-hand part of the screen.
How's that?
There we go.
You good? Okay.
He's ready. Okay. I'll call to the order the records retention meeting for Wednesday, August 19th, 2020. Roll.
Mr. Minor,
Aye.
Mayor Puckett,
Here.
Solicitor Ross,
Present.
and Mrs. Canada.
Present.
I do not believe we have any matters to deal with today. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Solicitor Ross, seconded by myself. Roll.
Solicitor Ross,
Yes.
Mayor Puckett,
Aye.
Mr. Minor,
Aye.
and Mrs. Canada.
Aye.
All right. Is everybody ready to start the council meeting?
The quickest meeting in the history of the village.
All righty. So I'd like to call to order McDonald Village Council meeting for Wednesday, August 19th, 2020. Roll.
Mr. Harvey,
Here.
Mr. Lewis,
Here.
Mr. Fisher,
Present.
Mr. DeZee,
Here.
Mr. Schmidt,
Present.
Mr. Joines.
Present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now have a moment of silence for troops serving here and abroad. We'll also do the Lord's Prayer if you so choose. Our Father, who art in heaven,
Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those
Trespass against us.
against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
moving on to approval of council meeting minutes from July 15th, 2020.
Yes, since this actually came before the adoption of the agenda, I move to approve the July 15th and the special meeting July 29th minutes as mailed.
Moved by Councilman Fisher to approve the July 15th and the July 29th council meeting minutes as mailed. Discussion. Roll.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Moving on to the adoption of tonight's agenda.
Yes, I'd like to amend the agenda, obviously, to reflect that we had an additional set of minutes and also to change the legislation A to an emergency reading.
Moved by Councilman Fisher to amend the agenda to add the extra minutes and also to change legislation A to an emergency. Discussion. Roll.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Moving on to the mayor's report, the monthly mayor's court report. Now's municipal court fines, $1,350. Parking tickets, $205. Law enforcement fund, $25. The total to the city, $1,580. The only other thing I have today for my report, what I'd like to thank Daniel Daniluk. They were paving the parking lot behind the senior center, behind the community room. And really the responsibility is about half of that. And he donated the rest of the paving and sealing to the village. and did the whole parking lot. So I would like to thank him on the record, and the village, greatly appreciates it. Moving on to report of village officials, our village administrator, Mr. Dimitrovich.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things. I know our residents are going to see that we have new recycling dumpsters at the street department garage area where we do recycle our plastics, papers, cans, etc. We used to have 3 large blue canisters, but they have been removed. Those were at a cost. We are now, we have been delivered 2 new green ones from Jaga Trumbull Solid Waste Management District. I'd like to thank Jennifer, the director out there, for helping us out to get some free front load dumpsters to help us continue to recycle in McDonald for free. Again, I appreciate her efforts and thank her for that, but looking to close out the deal we had previously for public, no problems, just that we are trying to cut costs. We'll encourage all residents to recycle everything that they have at our dumpsters that is recyclable, but ask kindly to break down cardboard and to not leave anything on the ground. On another matter, I'd like to thank our water department. They did work today on a water main break, a 12-inch line actually, supplying the village, and they did it in very good time and with everything in-house. We didn't have to outsource anything. So congrats to those guys and thank them for getting the job done quick and keeping McDonald residents with healthy water to drink. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Comments or questions for Mr. Dimitrovich? Our police chief and our fire chief were both unable to attend tonight. Their reports have been sent to all council. Hope you all got them, and we'll welcome them back at the next meeting. Moving on to our solicitor, Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick report regarding the Joe Dugan public records lawsuit that seemed to originate a long time ago. As you recall, the Trumbull County Common Police Court dismissed Mr. Dugan's claims rightfully. The 11th District Court of Appeals affirmed that dismissal. Mr. Dugan and his lawyer took it upon themselves to attempt to appeal to the Ohio Supreme Court. As expected, the Ohio Supreme Court did not accept that appeal. So Mr. Dugan's public records case is now concluded. I'm glad to report that for the first time in a very long time, as far as I know, Mr. Dugan has no pending actions, claims, or frivolous lawsuits against the village. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, but thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to, thank you, Mr. Ross, for, all the work you've done, and you do a great job for the village, for all your work.
Second.
Thank you.
Moving on to committee reports. President Pro Tem, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor. We met this evening for caucus via Zoom at 6 o'clock. Close at 6:05, discuss the agenda, fiscal officer's report, council minutes for both the July and special July meetings. Tonight's single piece of legislation, the Planning Commission with regard to rezoning of the property behind the village building, the facilities use agreement under service, the September meeting dates, which we will look to set as September 1st, a Tuesday, via Zoom at 6 p.m. For the committees again, and then the meetings to be held both on Wednesday, September the 2nd, and Wednesday, September the 16th at 6 p.m., both via Zoom. And then last but not least, we did discuss summer recess, which at this time I'd like to motion that we do exit summer recess and go to our regular meeting schedule beginning September 1st.
Moved by Councilman Lewis to exit summer recess. Discussion. Roll.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
That's all I had.
Comments or questions from Mr. Lewis? Moving on to our Parks and Buildings Chair, Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, a few things. We met last night at 6:16 with a full committee for our Parks and Buildings meetings. Some of the things we discussed was the park closing. Thanks to Hannah and all the park attendants, they did a great job this year under some really different circumstances. That program did end up ending last Friday, so thanks to them again and for everything that they've done. We discussed community room that's still closed and waiting for some guidance as far as what we may do that down the road. We discussed a little bit on the Cindy Green project and moving with more communications on that. It was also brought up that the fire department social organization has notified us that the October 10th 100-year reunion has been canceled. Hopefully they have it next year, but they have now made that announcement that they will not be holding the 100-year fire department on October 10th. It has been canceled. For me, it's a tough thing. I have my volunteer thing on tonight, and I hold you the 75-year reunion that we had, and it was quite a hoot. Everybody was invited back, all the chiefs, fire department people. We had a great dinner, great meetings. You know, Dan Nagy, a lot of the people came back, and such a celebration. And as we all sat there and said, well, you know, we're looking forward to this 100-year. Realizing some of them, just by age and health, would probably not make it for this 100th. But everybody that, you know, that was the theme of a lot of it was, God, I want to live to be the 100th anniversary for the fire department, because there's so much tradition, so many people that put in things. And, you know, I sit there and I think, and you know, just recently we lost firefighter and a former chief, Ray Lewis. You know, he's right in here, one of the, you know, officer, tremendous. When the village went into tough times when the mills closed and everything, and the fire department was trying to survive, we took over during 300 Club celebrations. You know, we would, you know, go and have 300 clubs. We would sell tickets, and we raised enough money by turnout gear for everybody. You know, we bought our own turnout gear for that. We did a lot of things to help move, because at that time, and Ray Lewis was a kingpin in that. He was the announcer, he was the seller. You know, all the families, all the relatives, all the people in this town, when times were tough and they weren't working, still come out to support the fire department. And, you know, Ray Lewis was a big clog. You know, he was a big part of that. You would find him anywhere, volunteering everywhere, you know, on the ambulance, as a captain, as a member. His son and daughter, you know, Terry and John, watching them grow up. And Ray Lewis was the one who got me into the fire department in May of 1977. He asked me if I wanted to play baseball. I said, yeah. He said, for the fire department, it'd be great. He said, I said, okay. He said, well, here, sign right here. I said, what's that? He said, well, you got to be a member of the fire department first. And I signed the paper, and what a great time. He was just that great. All the people that are in this book from the 75th, some really great names that are past former fire chiefs. You know, I'm thinking, you know, there's Mr. Byers, Gene Byers in here. When I look through this book and see all the wonderful people through the years, this department to survive 100 years through all the stuff that it went through is a compliment to them, and the dedication to the volunteers throughout the village. And the need is never stop for the volunteers or your young kids or stuff and looking for something. Nothing better start with the volunteer fire department. You can grow a career from there, and it helps the village. One of the very few villages that's 3 ambulances, 2 fire trucks. I mean, a full-time police department. We are so gifted and so lucky to have that. When you look around the area, you wonder why, you know, people, you see why they move here, and it's a great community. But to lose Ray was a tough thing. We lost a lot of great people, but the 75th, and I guess the theme next year will have to be, you know, it's 101 Dalmatians next year. You know, we just put it off and bring back the fire Dalmatians, and hopefully they can put something together. But you know, the 4th of July festival, all that stuff, the tradition behind this fire department, which goes back eons. You know, Jim Copan, you know, Jack Evans is still around. You know, there's very few people from that era that, you know, are still around here. We can talk about the Iron Monster for bingo, the French fry stands, all the stuff that took place. And missing that 100th this year was tough on me. It's tough on a lot of people who are fragile and may not make it till next year. But to those who will, just remember, we're always in our hearts. Once you become that, you become family, on the department forever. And we look forward to seeing them next year out of our hands again. The 100th would have been great. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen. And my condolences to the family of Ray Lewis, personal friend and known him for years. But just part of the volunteerism and the true values of the people that, in this village, what they could do to help out the community in so many different ways. So I thank them. Sorry to go on for a little bit, but I just couldn't pass that up. It's too much of, it's an important thing. 100 years is important, as with the 75th. I mean, they used to have, I think one of them, they had a grease pig thing, a grease pig. There were so many great things that they had throughout the years, but they were, the backbone of keeping this fire department and going through all the years took a lot of work and a lot of effort for a lot of people. He was one of them, and there's a ton of them out in this book, and I thank them all again. Sorry, we're not having the 100th, but I think of you all the time in this book, and I look at it and remember you guys. So thank you for your dedication. We closed at 6:24. The other, I don't think there's anything else that we had. We talked about, upcoming events, they're all on hold. We're waiting to see how things come out. We got, you're looking at the Fall Festival, Halloween, Christmas in the village, a lot of things that we're just waiting. We're waiting for governor's warning, for them to make decisions so we can make decisions. And it's been tough. I mean, we just having to wait and all the guidelines and things. And I think we've now officially going to be closing the park equipment down. I don't know if Mayor, you want to comment on that a little bit, or Tommy, about the park closing and some of the equipment?
Yeah, our park program has closed. Again, like we were before, we were able to hire park attendants to clean the equipment. The park will still be open for exercise and whatnot, but as far as the equipment and the other things that kids gather on, those will be closed. We don't have anybody to kind of stand by and sanitize. I guess the other issue, and we've run into it big time in the last few days, is the swings were still up and whatnot, but we were beginning to get a lot of gatherings. People were going down there and eating and not social distancing. At one point, our village administrator broke up a group of about 30 down there. It would be nice if we could keep things open. I know we're outside, but we still have to practice social distancing, kind of follow in the line of what the Board of Health in the state of Ohio is telling us. I do understand that maybe some other communities maybe aren't following the guidelines that they're told to do. But our job up here is to keep people as safe as possible. And like I said before, I would love to open the parks. I'd love to take my kids down and hit baseballs and do other activities. Just, in the situation we're in right now, just trying to keep everybody safe. And that's all I have to say about that. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Dimitrovic?
No, only that. Again, yeah, we do love our parks. We love our kids in this town. We do everything we can for them. But we are in a global pandemic, and to protect everybody in this community, whatever our personal feelings are, we have to act to protect everybody. And that means we're going to break up groups that gather. It's unacceptable. The groups that do gather, let everybody know, whether it's a sporting event or an activity, there is parameters. They have to take temperatures. They have to check symptoms. They have to wear masks. The kids that are showing up are not wearing masks. They're from different families. And we're trying to teach them safe practices. So it's not just a breakup. We're going to trying to teach them safe practices. They've got to hear it from us. We're not going to stop. We have to continue to try to protect them all the way through, even if that means we have to break up groups in our parks. And that's not what we want to do, but we know it's a safety practice right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Anybody else on the committee have anything you want to bring up? If not, we closed at 6:24, Mayor. Thank you.
Do you have comments or questions for Mr. Harvey? Moving on to our safety chair, Mr. Fisher.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Safety met last evening at 6:16. Both fire chief and police chief did submit their month-end reports. We did get a little bit of news that the production of the Ford Cruisers might go back into production, and there's a possibility that we might end up finally getting the Cruiser at the end of September. We'll see. We'll continue to update as we move on. But the fire chief did inform us that the Trumbull County Fire Chiefs Association had received a COVID grant that'll result in McDonald receiving 18 masks with cylinders and 20 reusable gowns. There was a 10% match of that, but our fiscal officer was kind enough to inform us that there was some local COVID money that had gone around, and we're able to use that as our match. So that equipment was all will all be acquired by the village at no cost. So awesome again for the fire department. They've got a lot of really good things, obtaining grants and obtaining equipment that didn't cost the village anything. So again, good job there. And that's all we had. We closed that meeting at 6:18. If anybody has any questions, I would be more than happy to entertain them.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, moving on to our finance and capital improvements chair, Mr. Lewis. Is Mr. Lewis still with us?
Sorry, I don't know how I got muted, but I was muted. So back to as I had started over. We met last evening at 6:02. We closed at 6:16 via Zoom. We discussed several items under finance, one of which was the use of the federal COVID funds, which we have been granted. Our department heads have submitted their list of needs. They are currently getting pricing for the quote unquote big ticket items per se to get our best bang for our buck, which we'll have further updates during the September committees so that we can then spend those funds by the deadline of October. We also mentioned another big loss to the village in the form of our local government funding. We've been informed that we're going to lose about $17,000 of that funding, to be a little over $20,000 for 2021. And to put it in perspective, for 2020, that number was $37,500. So we're looking at almost half of that money as a loss for 2021. So that being said, we did agree as a committee that our budget meetings will be delayed until September, because as we had discussed during our previous finance committee meetings, we just don't know how bad the hit from COVID is going to be with regard to the finances. And each and every day, each and every week and month, we're getting more and more news that's presenting a hit to that budget. So we're going to delay those until we know exactly what we're going to be dealing with, so that we can get a temporary budget by the end of September submitted. And we did ask all of our department heads in the meantime to take a look at wherever they can cut spending for not only the remainder of this year, but especially for 2021's budget moving forward. Then we also had a brief discussion on the utilization of the funds for our paving project. That was our match of $90,000 for the 2020 paving project, which we will discuss further in September meeting. And keep in mind, as we discussed earlier in the meeting yesterday, that that grant is available. It's not like it's something that we need to utilize immediately to still have that grant. So we'll have further discussion on that in the September meetings. And I'll close with, as I've said in the past couple months, especially with regard to finance, we need to continue to just prepare for the worst and hope for the best. We've been very fiscally responsible. I ask that everyone continues to do that. Although I hope the worst isn't to come, I hope we've really taken over the hump with regard to COVID-19. We just need to be in a good financial position for the remainder of 2020 and moving into 2021. That is all I had, Mayor.
Thank you. Comments or questions for Mr. Lewis? Moving on to our service chair, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor. Met at 6:24. We closed at 7:08. A few things that we did discuss that Mr. Dimitrovich had already mentioned. The Republic containers are now gone. I would like to also thank Jennifer for getting us two green containers at no cost. So that expense now will be removed from the village there. As far as what Mr. Lewis had just mentioned too with the paving project, it's going to be put on hold until, as he mentioned, until we see what the future is in store for us. This doesn't mean that we're not going to potentially work on that project or get that project completed, but we're going to be very cautious on how we spend our money. So we're going to keep that in mind though, and hopes that in the future we can get that done. We did move forward with the purchase of the lift truck. We discussed that last night. That will help us again with decreasing our expenditures out to rental companies to go around and to do tree removal. This will allow our guys to just go around at their convenience to remove trees as needed. Apparently there's a pretty long list of trees that need to be taken care of. So instead of renting something, we now have the capability of just going up and getting the truck and help with that, along with other things. It's a pretty high, I believe it's a 60-foot boom there, so we can access a lot of things there. With that, we also entered into executive session, and like I had stated, we did close at 7:08. And we also have to the facilities use agreement termination. So at this time, I'm going to motion to terminate the facilities use agreement with the McDonald Local School District Board of Education with the termination effective as of December 31st, 2020, and to authorize the solicitor to provide notice of the termination to the school district.
Moved by Councilman Schmidt to terminate the facility use agreement effective December 31st. Discussion. I guess to start off, I'd like to say that, other, than what's kind of been portrayed by some people, this is strictly a financial issue. The village donates over 300 hours to the school, man hours, which costs a lot of money. We provide free ambulance service, along with maintenance of boys baseball, girls softball, girls tennis, junior high and varsity cross country, boys and girls, Positive Impact Day, grade school picnics, senior class day, ram roast, and we set up the reviewing stand. Basically, the village is in a situation where we can no longer donate those kind of hours to the school financially. The actual cost of what we do is above $16,000. In the new agreement, we're asking the school to pick up $13,500. I think that's an extremely fair deal for the school. I don't see another way to put it. This, again, it's strictly financial. I'd like to put a couple things to rest, I guess, from watching the school board meeting. Some of the things that kind of bothered me. were that, I know the police and fire at the graduation festivities, as was portrayed to our superintendent when they first asked to have the graduation. It was explained to him that at the time we were in full quarantine with COVID. It had just come out, and what happens with that was we have part-time officers that work at the prison and were deployed through the National Guard, which left us with 6 full-time officers. Those 6 full-time officers were picking up every shift around the clock for a couple weeks. So when they were asked to work at the high school graduation, 2 of them actually stepped up and were actually paid by the school for their time there. They didn't have to, they did. I just thought that they should be acknowledged because there were police at the graduation. So the next thing I'd like to talk about was the comment that was made about how this vote happens, and let's see who's for the kids. And I take extreme offense to that from everybody in this administration, from myself, who donates a lot of time to the youth of McDonald. My kids both go here, they both play sports. And basically everyone in this administration has a child, a grandkid, a niece, a nephew, brothers, sisters that coach. Some of the people on this in this administration, they coach, and to make an assumption that we're against kids, the only thing I have to say about this is that shame on you for even making that comment, and it's offensive to me and anybody involved with this administration. That's all I have to say.
Not to kind of say exactly what the mayor just had mentioned, but with the termination date that we did extend it until the end of this year. So with that being said, with the termination, this should not affect any sporting events. The sporting events will probably be more affected due to the COVID situation that's happening right now. And the current agreement that we have does not allow for any reimbursement to the village from the district. And with the amount of materials and the proper maintenance that's required for these facilities, that, like the mayor had mentioned, it's too much for us now. And for years we've done this, but in today's day and age, unfortunately, right now, this is not something that we can move forward without any reimbursement with. So with that being said, that's all I really have to say as well.
The only other thing I have to add, I forgot to mention this, that I did meet with John Saganich, the president of the school board. I thought the meeting went extremely well, and I look forward to meeting with him in the future.
I just wanted to add, Sean, if I could.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of contact with some of the people at the school, as you have, and the mayor has, and several other councilmen. It's a very fruitful conversation. It shouldn't be a really contentious issue. We're really not that far off from having something to submit. Like you just got done saying, we couldn't charge for anything next year with the current contract. So we either had to redo it or get rid of it and resubmit something else. That we had to do for our financial health here. That has nothing to do with anything other than the financial health. But I'm extremely confident, having heard all of the conversation, that just adding a couple of things into the contract for peace of mind for the school. I think that it's probably going to be a pretty easy piece of legislation to hammer out and have in place by the end of the year. So I don't think we're going to go on without skipping a beat. I think it's going to be a pretty smooth transition into a new contract. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, thank. And I would have to agree with you on that as well. I feel like we can work through this. Mhm.
Agreed. Anyone else? Roll.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
No.
And that's all I have. Any other comments from service?
Comments or questions for Mr. Schmidt? Seeing none, moving on to our planning commission representative, Mr. Fisher.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Planning Commission had two different meetings. Wednesday, July 29th, we did have a special council meeting. Following that, we had a public hearing for the Planning Commission to introduce a zoning change at 452 Pennsylvania Avenue. All of the proper individuals in that area were notified and given an opportunity to appear. Nobody appeared. There was no communication sent to the village. So we ended up closing that public hearing. Immediately following that, we had a planning commission meeting where we voted to approve and submit to council for our recommendation to council to approve a zoning change at 452 Pennsylvania Avenue. So at this point in time, I will move to set a public hearing to hear opinions on the zoning change at 452 Pennsylvania Avenue from commercial A to residential A.
Moved by Councilman Fisher to have a public meeting to rezone 452 Pennsylvania Avenue to CA to RA. Discussion? Roll.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Okay, and then we also held a meeting Wednesday, August the 12th, where we met specifically to entertain a replat request from the school at the old Roosevelt Elementary property. And the Planning Commission did see fit to approve the replatting of that lot into 12 different lots. And that's all I had to report on that. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to entertain them.
Comments or questions for Mr. Fisher? Moving on to our community chest representative, Mr. DeZee.
Thank you, Mayor, but no report at this time.
Yeah. Comments or questions for Mr. DeZee? Seeing no remarks from persons or group present. Seeing no old business, seeing no new business. Moving on to legislation A.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have an emergency reading of an ordinance authorizing the use of blanket purchase orders for expenditures and setting the dollar limit and other criteria for such certification.
Move to suspend the rules of council.
Moved by Councilman Lewis to suspend the rules of council. Discussion? Roll.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Move to pass as emergency.
Moved by Councilman Lewis to pass this as an emergency. Discussion?
Yes, Mayor, just to reiterate, real quick, just to reiterate, this was good to be the third read. We are passing this as an emergency simply due to summer recess so that we can waive that 30 days for it to take effect. in order to help the fiscal officer to begin using the blanket purchase orders immediately. That is all.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Roll.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Thank you. Seeing no more legislation, moving on to the fiscal officer's report.
Oh, yes, thank you. It's just the bills tonight. So I, Lori Canada, Fiscal Officer for the Village of McDonald, Ohio, do hereby declare that the bills are true and correct in the amount of $182,938.16, and the money is in the bank to pay them.
Move that we accept the VFO's report and pay all bills.
Moved by Councilman Lewis to accept the VFO's report and pay all bills. Discussion. Roll.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
You seeing nothing under miscellaneous. Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Councilman Harvey to adjourn. Roll.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Thank you.